Hello, fabulous family. Sally the Seeker here. I hope you all are doing well. So, the Timothy Ferriter sentencing did occur on November 16th. I came straight home from work. I think it had just concluded by the time I got home, or to get home earlier from school, but I began recording it and editing. Well, I haven't edited much, but I will. But let me just tell you, that thing was 3.5 hours. I was like, okay. Now, like with Darrell, there were a lot of impact statements, which there are in this one. But with this, it was just this back and forth. It was like its own separate court session between the defense and the state. And oh my gosh, I'm going to try to spare you of some or a lot of that stuff and just try to highlight the important parts, because it went on and on and on, and I was getting tired. And then it was funny, at one point I stopped for a break, and I don't know what I was doing. I was kind of going through YouTube, and the fellow, love him, live from my sofa. I don't know if you ever watch him, but he's awesome. He's so funny. And apparently he was having the same feeling I was, because it was like, it was still going on and on and on. So he posted a picture of the old lady from the Titanic, and he wrote something like, he typed something underneath it, something like, me waiting to get to the sentencing. And that's exactly what it felt like. It was crazy. I'll just play a little movement here while we're, Timothy, which I will let you hear, he's speaking to his kids, the court. And look, he's had it rough these last, I think it's 3 weeks, as he will say. He's already been roughed up a little. People wanting money. I'm sure they've all been watching, and when you have money, people are going to threaten you for it. So he's already had a rough go during his time in the box. But so I'm going from the beginning, but really this is the end after I watched it, because I wanted to watch it and just watch it and for the first time and just react as I would. And it's kind of good that I did, because there were parts that I got very emotional about, and I just couldn't really couldn't weigh in a lot on it. But that's just kind of how I am. I think I even say it in here, I have to process things and, chew on it a little and digest it. And so I didn't have a lot of words. I had some, but it is very interesting. I was definitely quite surprised. You all might have already seen what his sentencing was, but in some aspects I kind of get it. But I'll kind of try to insert during my editing my feelings or what I think. Again, these are just my thoughts, my opinions. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist. Just a person who loves this kind of stuff, loves for justice to be served. And I like to research, and so I comment and react to these. And yeah, some of this was really tough. But, we got to keep in mind, Tracy still has to have her day in court. And my question is, I just wonder, what the heck? How's that going to go? Will it go through? Will she do a plea deal? Plea deal. I know that sounds kind of weird. Sorry about that. But, as I said before, he had an opportunity. He was offered a plea deal for I think it was 2 years and 5 years probation, which he definitely should have taken. But I think, my opinion is, I think he really believed he was doing right. Now, maybe here when you hear him speak, and I'm just going to tell you all right off, the audio is horrendous. It's not just on one channel, it's several. You can hear the gist of it, but certain people, when they're speaking in the microphone, Judge being one, and unfortunately Timothy the other, it's just it kind of blares. So if you're wearing any kind of headset or anything, just watch out, because it'll get louder, then quieter. I tried to, of course, with my limited technology that I have present here, there's not much I can do, but it does have the closed captioned stuff underneath, which hopefully that will help you. But yeah, I was really kind of torn on this one when the sentencing was given. Wow. I'm still kind of speechless like I was. I've kind of thought it would be more, but then on the other hand, there were some things the judge pointed out, and which is very hard for me to do, that's why I think I'd be a dreadful juror, if I remove my emotion from it and try to just look at the facts and the law and all that kind of stuff, it makes a little more sense to me. But it's still like, wow. And I'm just going to warn you, the impact statements, wow. His mom gives one. I mean, I get it. And I comment on it. But I think that's enough to get this started with. But I wanted to just let you know I was watching it as it happened. I didn't watch it ahead of time when I recorded it. And you'll see I'll get kind of quiet, and just because that's how I am sometimes. That's how I react sometimes. And other times, well, especially if it's somebody like Darrell or somebody, I'm going to be yelling about the injustice, and probably I'll say some things if I show more videos of what happened in court that led to this day. But let me go ahead and get with it, and hopefully I will be able to trim more out as I go along. So here we go.
Father Presta, are you able to hear us? Okay, he cannot hear us. So what I will do while we sort that out, Your Honor, is I will have Tim's mother make a statement, and then I will, if we can mute Father Presta, because I don't know that he entirely...
I can.
Oh, can you hear us now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Oh, wonderful.
All right, Father, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, begin the inquiry, Ms. Moran.
Thank you. Father Presta, could you just introduce your full name, please, so that we can have it for the record?
My name is James Preston.
Where do you work, Father Presta?
I'm a priest in the Archdiocese of Chicago, and I'm the pastor of St. Emily Parish in Mount Prospect, Illinois.
And I believe you've prepared a statement to read to the court on behalf of Tim Ferriter. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, could you go ahead and read that statement, please?
Yes. My name is Father James Presta. I'm a priest of the Archdiocese of Chicago. When I was ordained in 1986, I was assigned to St. Christopher Parish in Midlothian, Illinois. During my first few weeks in the parish, I met Tim's mother and stepfather, Maureen and John McGraw, who lived a few doors down from the church. They had 5 children from Maureen's first marriage, and Maureen and John would then have 3 other children of their own during my years at St. Chris. So a total of 8 children in this blended Ferriter McGraw family. Tim was the third of 8 children. He was in 5th grade when I arrived in the parish. He and his older brother Patrick were altar servers at St. Christopher's. Because I was one who trained with the servers, I knew Tim. I also became friends with his family and was often invited for dinner at their home. I knew Tim also because I taught classes at St. Christopher Catholic School, where all the Ferriter children were enrolled. And in particular, Tim was in the 8th grade when I taught a course in Spanish. He was a very good student. In 1993, when I was assigned to another parish in the Martyrs in Everglades Park, Tim's family had moved into Lenox, but I continued to remain friends with the entire family. Of the 8 children, I've celebrated 5 of their weddings, and I presided over the wedding of Tim and Tracy Ferriter. I also baptized some of the children. Tim has been a very faithful Catholic layman. He was instrumental in working with Tracy to become Roman Catholic. I've known Tim as a very kind and caring, compassionate man, a good son, husband and father, a wonderful provider for his family. Tim came from a very loving Catholic family. I've always found Tim to be hardworking, sincere, and respectful, very friendly and outgoing, and a real people person, a man who was responsible and a man of his word. If I asked Tim to do something for me, I knew he would do it and do it well. I have nothing but good things to say about Tim. Candidly, I was not aware of the issues Tim was having with Ronan or how he was handling it. He never confided in me about any aspect of his family life in the family home. But what I learned, Tim was making some very bad and poor choices in dealing with his son's behavior. I was certainly distraught to hear what happened in their home regarding some of his behavior problems. This doesn't seem to be the Tim Ferriter I've known over the years. Yet I know that Tim has a good heart. I know he's always tried to do the right thing in life, and the person I've known over the years. I know he has no criminal record. I would hope that the court would at least look at his past clean record and good character. As a Catholic priest and believer in God's unconditional mercy and love for his people, I believe Tim is worthy of the court's mercy. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 15 of the parable of the prodigal son, the father forgives the son for all he's done, including disowning his own father. I would hope that some mercy and compassion would be shown to Tim for the good he's tried to do for his family, despite making very poor and awful parenting decisions with his son. And indeed, Tim has been a great friend and a wonderful support to me as a priest over these past 37 years.
Thank you so much, Father Presta. I don't have anything additional for this witness, Your
Thank you,
Honor.
Ms. Ward. Ms. Coakley, any questions?
No, I'm just getting
Okay, all right, okay. All right, thank you, sir. You can remain in the Zoom room. We'll put you back in the general population.
Your Honor, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're moving.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, call the next witness, Ms.
Your
Brown.
Honor, just a brief statement from his mother, Maureen McGraw.
If it's just simply statements, I can do that from the podium. They don't need to be on the witness stand for that.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I'll do that. Whenever you're ready, Maureen.
Okay, good afternoon. As you know, I'm Maureen, mom of Tim Ferriter. While I say I don't condone Tim's behavior, that behavior was atypical. Tim has always been a loving and gracious son. He was never a problem and never really got into much trouble, despite the closeness of his brother. Well, he and Pat used to get into little rows, but they never got into outside trouble outside the house. He was always active in sports and school activities. He was active in our church, serving as an altar server every Sunday, as Father Presta just said. Many people have said nice things about Tim, and everything said is true. I remember so vividly that when Caitlin, who is my number 7, was born, he was so excited, Tim was so excited with her presence in our home that he used to take her for a walk almost every day in her stroller. Tim has always exhibited a great love for family. As he grew older, his love for his own family was apparent. He and Tracy, on their own dime, went down to work with poor kids in Honduras. They were down there for about a year, and they were teaching down there. Tim and Tracy spent that year out of the goodness of their hearts. Years later, that love for children was shown again when they departed to pick up Fiona, and then again in a trip to get Ronan. To me, these actions were actions of love. I'm imploring you, Judge Coates to show some mercy on Tim. I'm going to be 74 next month, and I would like to spend some time with Tim before I go. I love Tim very much, and I respect him as a person, as a son. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's nothing happy about this. It's sad. That's his mom. That's her son. That's all I can say about that for now.
And Your Honor, before Mr. Ferriter allocutes, the state and defense did agree to 2 stipulations. I was unable to print them out this morning, but may I read them into the record?
You may. No objection? Okay.
Both the state and defense agree that the following facts are true for the purposes of this hearing, Your Honor. Mr. Ferriter no longer has parental rights to RF and PF. Mr. Ferriter has parental rights to NF and FF, however, they are in permanent outside placements. Secondly, there was a no contact order issued in 22 DP 62 between Mr. Ferriter and RF, NF, and FF. The no contact order permits contact only at the discretion of the children.
All right, thank you, Ms. Morrow.
Thank you. And with that, if Mr. Ferriter could speak, Your Honor, I can hold the mic.
He's going to speak. Wow.
Can you administer the oath, Madam Clerk?
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You may remain seated, Mr. Ferriter.
From the day I was born on the Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia, until this very day, I have had many challenges, but many more blessings. I want to give thanks to God for everything. Domino non movite.
Sounded
I want to
awesome.
start out by recognizing that all my kids have been devastated by...
Sorry about this, but the sound is just awful. I noticed that I've checked other channels for this, and who comes off kind of bleary is like the judge, and now Mr. Ferriter. So, but I do see they have that closed caption there. Hopefully that will be helpful. We'll try.
this entire situation, and I am very sorry to them that they've had to go through this. Mama and I have lost all your kids, and all you have kids also have lost your parents.
Sorry. Take your time.
In my Catholic faith, we define love in the following way. Love is willing the good of the other for other. Let me say that again. Willing the good of the other for other. What do I mean by this? I'll give two examples. If at 2 a.m., my wife or I got out of bed to attend to take care of a crying baby, Fiona, Ronan, Noah, or Pierce, that act of getting out of bed to take care of the crying child is not necessarily for the benefit of Tracy or myself. It's the benefit for the crying baby. Another example, a family of 6, we as a family of 6, Tracy, I, Fiona, Ronan, Nola, and Pierce, would routinely visit nursing homes. We would ask to visit the elderly people who never got visitors. Bringing the kids would always burst with smiles on the faces of everyone. This act was primarily for the benefit of the elderly people in the nursing home, not for the 6 of us. Everything I did was out of love. I pray that as a father, you empathize with this. My life is not about me. Rather, my life is about giving it up in life, especially for my family, while willing the good of the other for other. Next, I want to speak directly to my family. Ronan, sorry for everything. Everything you have gone through, and everything you continue to go through. I am empathetic to where you are placed now. I did all that I could to help you avoid that. As your father, I wish I could be by your side now and stand strong with you. I thank you, Ronan, for your honesty and courage when you spoke of mercy a few weeks back. Ronan, you were my first boy. I miss our boys' time together, Ronan. Our outings together. You're such a smart boy, young man. I miss all of your creative ideas you used to share with the whole family. We could always depend on you to come up with something creative and to build something that needed to be built. Ronan, keep up the curiosity and the desire for learning. I love you always, and please know that you'll always be my boy.
Well, I just gotta stop that for a minute. I don't know. What do y'all think? I don't know what to say. Why didn't he say any of those things? Well, then now he's saying the name Ronan was in the box. Where was the encouragement there? I understand frustration, but where was the encouragement there? And why did they put him? Why did he put him there? Why did they put him there? That's the part I never understand. It's like that lady that spoke. She'd been to 18 different people. And, you know, as you already know, I'm doing this kind of ahead of a lot of the court stuff. But I just don't think they sought much help in a lot of places. And I'm not saying that as a criticism, but putting him in the box was an awful idea. That's all I can say about that. But it's very sad, and it's very sad for the rest of the kids. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because Ronan and the oldest daughter, whose testimony you will be hearing, I guess they don't have any parental rights over them, but it sounds like the two others, which are the birth children, I mean, they're biological children, they do. Oh man, it'll just be interesting to see what happens. This is so sad, though. I mean, I feel sad for his mom. I mean, but the kids, what about the kids? You know, as much as I complain about mine, I'm just like, I have this beautiful little girl in my class, and I can't really, obviously I can't say what's going on, but I know there's some things happening in her home that are not good, and she's just so bright in her own way, and most of us don't know what the heck is going on in these kids' homes, but I will continue to let him speak.
I don't know what my beautiful girls. I'm deeply sorry for all that you have had to endure. For almost the last 2 years. My job as your father is to protect you from what has happened to you since February 1st, 2022. And I have failed at that. Please know that I love you both now and forever, and nothing will ever change that. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor present things, nor future things, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature will be able to separate us from the love, from this love, from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. You are both resilient young women, Fiona and Noah. And in the end, everything will be okay because God has a plan. Fiona, when you are ready, feel free to reach out to your extended family, including the grandparents. Everyone loves you, Fiona, and are waiting with open arms to embrace you, to love you. In the end, Fiona, all you have is your faith in your family. I miss Fiona, I miss your sweet personality, your beautiful smile, and our intellectual discussions on literature, current events, religion, and other inspiring topics you came up with. I miss watching Hamilton with you. I miss hearing you sing the songs. I miss listening to the Beatles with you and Coldplay with you. I miss going on daddy-daughter dates with you. I love you always. I will love you always. You are my girl. Noah, your energy and personality always fills the room, and I love that about you. You are talented in so many ways. From your baking birthday cakes for everyone of the year to your athletics. In my heart, I will always be in the stands cheering you on. Please remember this, that I'll be in the stands all the way from now until you play for Notre Dame or Arizona. Keep the joy in your heart alive, Nolan. Don't lose that caring nature. I miss playing catch with you. You always threw the ball so hard it hit my hand. I miss shooting baskets with you, playing horse one-on-one, watching you dribble between your legs and around your back. I miss coaching your various teams. I miss coaching you and Fiona on basketball together. You brought many blessings to my life, and I'm grateful for that. Noah, your extended family, like I said to Fiona, including grandparents, love you and are rooting for you with open arms when you are ready. They are your only family, Noah, and we miss you dearly. I quote St. John McGraw when I say to my kids, have a great day. Ronan, Fiona, Noah, Pierce wouldn't remember it, but have a great day. Know that I will always love you, Noah. You are my girl. Pierce, my baby boy. I know you're very young and don't understand what is going on, but please know that I love you, and everything I did was for you. I quote you, Pierce, when I say, I miss you always. I love you always. Please know, Pierce, that I do miss you always. And I do love you always. I hope to be able to play hide and seek with you again, to be able to coach your T-ball team again, and to be able to go on bug adventures with you again. By the way, Nolan, Pierce is also hitting from the left side of the plate, as I know you are, and he has a couple of home runs already, so watch out. Tracy, my beautiful, selfless, loving wife, you always do everything for our kids and our family first, and take care of yourself second. You are the most selfless person I know. We love all of our kids the same and initially adopted Ronan from Vietnam, so Fiona did not have to grow up without an adopted sibling, and so she had another Asian kid with her, as she would be a minority where we lived. I miss all of them, and I love all of them, as I know you do. We would do anything for our kids. Once all the kids were taken, the house was silent, and all the beds were empty. We began this sad, sad journey together. I know even, and now, we have even been separated. Please keep your faith strong and know that as none of this makes sense, we must believe that God has a plan. We know that there must be a bigger reason for all this suffering. We know we like this, so I'll say this to you. When the storm comes, do like Simon Peter and keep your eyes on Jesus. I will always love you, my beloved wife. Finally, I want to note that on the first days at the gun club jail, I've been jumped multiple times. I have had my head punched and beat until bleeding. I have been approached and threatened by multiple people that if I don't pay them on a weekly basis, I will face consequences. Also, everyone recognizes me in jail, which makes me a target every day for every new person that crosses my path. I understand the court has to make a tough decision at this point in any case, and I empathize with you and that grave responsibility that we have. I also plead with you, Judge Coates, to use your discretion to lean into mercy for my family and myself to make your decision. I ask that you allow me to serve my sentence outside the jail or prison, under house arrest or monitor or under probation, so as to be able to support the ones I love and the ones that depend on me. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Ms. Robb, any other witnesses?
I don't have any additional evidence.
I just have to pause for a minute there. Having a time. But what about the kids? What are the kids going through? I don't know what's going to happen to the mom. I kind of don't have a lot to say. That's why a lot of times I will watch videos before I share them with you, because I always have to think a lot about what I'm going to say. But it's still interesting to watch it. I mean, when you're watching it with me, you'll be watching it the first time with me too, if that makes sense. But it's sad. It's sad. This could have been a great family, but the kids. What about the kids? I don't know. I guess the whole kids. It bugs me the most that the family's been torn apart. Why didn't they get more help?
Your Honor, for argument, I will reference additional letters and reports that were admitted into evidence and provided, but
Relative to the downward departure or relative to the overall sentencing, or are you able to even separate them?
I can do that.
Okay, all right.
If that's all right with you.
That's fine. Okay.
So other than that, I don't have any additional evidence to admit at this time, and I'll save the rest for argument.
Okay, all right, so, Ms. Coakley, state ready to
So I
proceed.
just have one brief witness, and then I have some witness impact statements.
Okay,
Okay?
let's administer the oath to him.
Sure.
Raise your right hand. Madam Clerk, if you could administer the oath.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. All right, you may proceed.
Oh, it's the son, I think. The victim. Oh my gosh.
I came here today to see your face again. It might be the last. So let us make this right.
Oh boy.
Would it not be proper to say our last goodbyes? It looks like we hit a fork in the road, and it seems that I can only fit on the path on the right, but you were left with the left one. Some might wonder why I came to see you again. A lot of people do not like what you did to me. Why come back? Well, it's because behind this monster of madness, guilt, anger, and wrongdoing, I see a soft spot. I see what you truly are. I know that hiding in the darkness of fear and blame there is true fatherly love. In the exact same spot, there's nurturing. I believe that it can still be activated. We just need to excavate the corrupted parts of your heart. Most people think that I am sensitive when it comes to talking about you. That is true and false. I do want to talk about you. That's because I still love you. And I'll always love you. Until the end of my days. I just wanted to say that I wish you never did the things you did to me. And I think that it was just a long dream. I wish I wanted to say that you never left. When every day passes since we last made contact,
Oh, God.
I feel like everything is slowly taken away from me.
No kidding.
I want to say I miss those brown eyes. I miss knowing what you're doing. I also miss knowing how your day has been. I keep on thinking about you, whether I'm in a good mood or not. When I said I was family, I was something I really meant. I just wish you the best.
Oh.
I want to say that you were everything I needed all along. But Baba, I want you happy whether or not it's with me. I wanted to be with you. That is something I wish I really meant. Right now you're facing heavy consequences, but that is something that I cannot change. My father was a good person who just made a really serious mistake. He was not a bad parent. He worked in the medical field when I was a young age. We went on to out-of-country vacations, such as Canada and France. He had a lot of friends. He had a positive impact on those around him. But we got to remember that a mistake was made, and trauma lasts. It could burn through people's brains, souls, hearts, and destroying everything in its path. It creates pain. It creates suffering. It creates hate. And the last thing I want to do is hate. A lot of people dislike you because of your actions, and some have feelings of hatred. However, I still love you, and I will continue to love you for the rest of my days. But how do I feel about you? I feel sad. I feel sympathy. I feel hope. But most importantly, I feel forgiveness. Other people may not think that, but I do. In that I hope you can gather yourself and try to follow up on the consequences of your actions. Just remember that I'm still your son, no matter what, and always remember that I'm still a Ferriter. And Judge Coates, I wish you could sentence my beloved father, Tim, 6 months jail time, 5 years probation.
Wow.
And true mercy is not just from the heart. It's the will of the victim to accept mercy that he has received for his wrongdoings.
Thank you.
Your Honor, next I have a victim impact statement from Dr. Waller, and she's on Zoom.
Okay, I gotta pause for a moment. Oh my goodness. What a courageous, well-spoken, forgiving child. When y'all hear the videos, and a lot of it is just audio they don't show, but to hear how he speaks to the son and the mom is heartbreaking. I don't know. It's just, it'll be interesting to see. I just don't have a lot of words. But we will continue on.
Okay.
Your Honor, I never received this in advance as well. I'll be objecting. This is not a listed witness.
She's providing a victim impact statement, Your Honor. That's permissible. It's not.
Objection's overruled. Where is she in Zoom here?
Instantly cover the other, but because they were children playing too rough. The girls remember Ronan taking the door off the hinges of his loft bedroom when he was around 10 years old. This incident was right before his parents moved him into the garage. They remember that Ronan was so tiny when he was 10. They wondered how he was able to get the door off the hinges. The girls remember the door falling on their mother, who was on the other side of the door. They remember Ronan trying to get out of his room to use the bathroom. These are the sordid stories that their friends read online and then look at them and wonder about at school. The girls didn't understand what was happening to Ronan at first, but they developed their autonomy. As they developed their autonomy, they began to question why their parents treated their brother so differently. They began to wonder why they were all treated so differently. They began to wonder why they could live worldwide, live in a beautiful house on 10 acres with a pool and a golf pad, and go to private schools, but their brother didn't have a regular doctor or therapist to help them. They began to understand that their brother was running away in an attempt to get out of a horrible situation that he was in. They began to become afraid of their father, citing his unpredictable behavior, and of their mother for not stopping it. Nolan and Fiona will tell you that Ronan is kind, gentle, and caring. Ronan was on the ring tape speaking to his father. Everyone heard it. While Ronan's father was angry, challenging his behaviors, threatening to lock an ankle monitor on him, and threatening to take him out of school to homeschool him further within his locked room, Ronan answered his father respectfully, demurely, and never once talked back. That's the brother the Ferriter daughters will tell you was present most of the time that they were together. For the girls, hearing that their father was parenting Ronan poorly, and that it was Ronan's fault that he was locked in a room for hours upon hours was the most upsetting part for the Ferriter girls. The girls will tell you that their dad has a college degree and has traveled worldwide, helping others succeed. He has 3 children that he treats very differently. Nola was recently able to spend time with an uncle that she hadn't seen in years. This uncle physically resembled her father. The resemblance was so uncanny that it threw her back a little. She wasn't expecting anyone to look so much like her dad physically. She spent a few days with this uncle and his family. She learned that this uncle was very different than her father. He was kind, he was loving, he was attentive, he was personable, and he was gentle. When it was time for her to leave, she broke down into tears when she got into the car to return home. She was sobbing. Her question, how did my dad get it so wrong? Your Honor.
Thank you.
Wow.
Victim impact statement, Turner. The first is from Fiona Ferriter.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I ask Dr. Waller one question, please?
I will permit it.
Thank you. Dr. Waller, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Priya Murad. How are you? Dr. Waller, your statement was specifically as to the 2 girls, correct?
From there, yes.
Okay, and is that something that you wrote and that they approved?
That's something that I wrote and all 3 children approved.
Okay, and then you haven't, I believe in several months, if not a year, personally treated RF, is that correct?
That is incorrect. I saw him Tuesday.
Okay, and are you his treater, like are you treating him right now, or did you just see him?
No, I'm treating him.
Okay, was there a gap in that at some point?
Relevance, and it goes, there's privilege issues.
I'll allow the question to be answered, but then I'm going to cut it off. You can answer the question as presented.
Yes.
Okay, and when was that gap? I'm just asking for time frame, no specifics.
The gap in me personally treating him,
Correct.
from June of 2022 until, I'm gonna have to say, Your Honor, I don't have an exact time frame, but probably the last 2 to 3 months, he was re-engaged in renal treatment.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Waller.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Do you have any follow-up questions? Thank you, Dr. Waller. All right.
The first is from Fiona Ferriter, Your Honor.
Okay.
Where to begin? There is a lot I could say about this situation. My name is Fiona Ferriter. I am Ronan Ferriter's older sister and the eldest daughter of Timothy and Tracy Ferriter. I wanted to share the impact of my brother's abuse on him, my sister Nola, and my other brother Pierce. Consider what it is like to have lived in a house where you can hear the screams of your younger brother when he is not in his room. Screams of frustration, hurt, anger, fear, helplessness, and despair. Where you can hear your father yell profanities at him. Where I could hear my father beat him to the point where my brother was no longer screaming, but crying out in pain and barely able to answer questions. I thought it was over after I heard my dad slam the door shut and storm up the stairs. But no, it was just the continuation of a cycle I knew would start again. That happened too many times to count. It was the same thing. It became a routine. And I couldn't do a thing to stop it. All I could do was hope the storm blew over and that no one else would be targeted. Nola, Ronan, and I all played the game of hot potato with a bomb that could explode at any moment. Who was going to face Tim's angry tone next? Was he going to rage? Would he slam the door? Would he shout? Or was he going to stuff his anger down his throat and plaster a smile on his face and let us off with a warning? No one dared push him past his limit. We didn't want to be the next person locked in our room or restricted from leaving the house. I learned to clam up when those eyebrows drew together and those eyes darkened. We learned to ask for things at the right time when he was content. I tried yelling back once. It got me nowhere. He disregarded my attempts to get him to listen. All he could see was disrespect. All he could hear was a rude daughter. The moment I discovered that he couldn't hear me, I snapped my jaw shut and matched his glare. I looked for any sign of an understanding father. He couldn't see or hear the daughter that just wanted her Baba to understand her, to listen to her for once. That's all she wanted that dark night when she looked up at her father's unyielding face. Instead, she went to bed with angry tears and left behind a stone statue of a parent. When we went out, we all put on the best family faces. We were the perfect Ferriter family, and we were the Ferriter kids, perfect, polite children, each with our own strict roles. But if you looked closer, you would see the cracks that opened every time the door shut and we were in our own home. You'd see that the oldest child who watches her family silently, trying to keep it from fragmenting. You'd see a middle brother slowly start to stop smiling in pictures. Then there was the younger sister, who, despite seeming like the golden child, barely opened up to her parents. And finally, there is the baby, who fortunately is not quite old enough to fully understand the thin layer of glass his family walks on. We were all actors, pawns in the game of life my parents wanted us to play. My brother ran away several times. These are the two major instances that I can remember. The first night he returned seemingly shocked and slightly dazed. He never told me what happened. To be honest, I probably saw less of him after that. The second instance, he didn't come back. I remember my mother sending me down into the dark of Arizona to our driveway to call for him. She thought that he might be more likely to answer me than her. I wanted to ask her if she knew why. It's not right that a child should not come home when their mother, who should care for them, calls them. But of course my brother didn't. So I walked down that driveway and called for him. Even though I called for him, I whispered to myself, "Don't come back. It will be so much worse if you come back."
Oh.
By then, I was past the sensor that our driveway had and was looking out into the inky blackness of the night. For a moment, I considered how easy it would be to run after my brother. After all, my mother was on the porch and the sensor wouldn't be able to tell. I had the chance. But where would I go? And more importantly, who would take care of my other siblings? So I turned back and walked back inside the house. That night was scary. My younger sister came into my room and we had the most serious discussion, maybe longest discussion we had ever had in a while. I could tell that we both did not feel safe in the house. So I offered to have her sleep in my room with me, something we hadn't done since elementary school. I placed a little bell on the door and told her if something were to happen, we would hear the bell and be ready. We talked about our parents. We wondered if they would ever divorce because we could hear them shouting at each other. Eventually, our brother came back. Things got worse. They started to keep him in the laundry room with no pants. One time, they blocked up the door with boxes so he couldn't get out. He was kept on even more surveillance. At this point, he may as well have been a prisoner. My father found him with a cord for charging a phone. When he asked my brother why he had that, my brother told him that he was going to try and hang himself. My father mocked him, asked him, "Did you really think that could hold your weight?" My father may as well have laughed in my brother's face. It reminded me of a different time my brother had mentioned suicide. We were at some hotel and my brother was sitting on the floor. We were arguing about something and he shouted at me that he wanted to kill himself. At the time, it was my mother who brushed it off. The effect was the same for both times. The only difference is that the broken defeat in my brother's voice instead of the angry shout as he admits his desire to die. There were other instances, other signs I should have noticed, but I didn't, and I could do nothing. I couldn't do a single thing to stop any of it. I couldn't stop my father from grabbing my brother by the back of his neck. I couldn't stop my father from lifting my brother up the wall with only one hand on his neck. I tell the same story every time, and it's still on my mind. What if my father had killed my brother? What if he had died that day in front of me? What if he had suffocated or his neck had snapped? What if it happened and I didn't see? What if I woke up one day and my brother was no longer with me? They could say it was an accident, but that's not the point. My brother would have died because of my father's anger. All I wanted was my father's approval. That's all we wanted. We wanted to hear him congratulate us on a job well done. When we were younger, we heard the praise, but my brother slowly stopped hearing it. In exchange, he heard crass language coming from a man who was supposed to be his caretaker, his protector. I know my brother was hyper. He needed something to do. He needed more attention. He did not need to be told that he was going to end up in jail if he kept acting the way he did. He needed guidance of what's right and what's wrong. He did not need to be slapped like a bad dog. He deserved answers and more help. None of that was given to him. We moved to Florida the night after my winter formal. One night I was with one of my friends. The next morning I was in a car ride out to Florida. I still had my friend's rose and chocolate he had given me as a gift with me in the seat. I remember sitting in my room even after it had been put together. It felt like I was living in a stranger's house, like all this was all temporary, a poorly planned joke. It felt like we were on vacation and we're going to go back any time, and secretly I wish we did. We did end up moving, at least my siblings and I did, but not in the way we imagined. My brother ran away again. He did not come back and everyone got tense. My father got even more angry. One night my sister and I were tasked with cleaning the kitchen. We cleaned and went to our rooms. Then suddenly we hear our father grumbling in a loud tone. He slammed open our doors and asked us why the counters were still dirty and bellowed at us some more, asking if he had to do everything himself. My sister started crying and we silently rewiped the tables. I retreated to our Florida room with my phone. My sister told me she was going on a bike ride. I numbly nodded and went to call my friend. I didn't know what to do. My father came out of his room once and I watched him grab a drink and then hide away back in his room. It didn't quite register with me that my sister had just gone for a bike ride in the middle of the pitch black night. I don't think I would have been surprised if she didn't come back. Running away was no longer an improbability. She did come back and we wondered what the next thing would be. At some point, my parents left the house to go to a softball tournament and my father left the country. I was home alone. I rode my bike from school and band sessions. I was told not to let my brother in the house. I was alone in a new house with just the dogs for company. As of right now, I cannot remember the in-between. The next few things I remember include leaving my room one night and seeing policemen talking to my mom. I remember being afraid of the way they peered around the corner at me. I didn't know what they were talking about. Then I remember someone coming in and taking pictures. We were pulled out of school. As a student who was not known for being a troublemaker, the day I was called to the front office was odd. Someone escorted me to the office. I heard the police announce over their walkie-talkies that I was on my way to the office. I was told over and over again that I wasn't in trouble. I was driven in a car to a meeting point. My sister was in another group of people. We were told to turn off our phones so they couldn't be tracked. We were driven to a place in a state of semi-confusion. Soon we were sitting in a building waiting to be asked questions. I knew exactly why I was there. I knew exactly what they were going to ask about. I cried. I felt so guilty. I felt like I was betraying my parents. But a part of me knew all of this was a long time coming. Then we were shuffled They didn't have a placement ready for me at first, but the foster parents, my sister and little brother were going to be sent to luckily allowed me to come.
I don't know what's going on with the sound.
Go back home. I cried to God. Why me? Why us? This isn't fair. Ronan was a child. I have seen what my parents have been saying, and all of it is a bunch of empty excuses, a bunch of flimsy covers for atrocities they committed. Yes, Nola got sent to the hospital.
To the what? Why can't we hear all of it?
Up every now and then. It's how we learn to toughen up. My brother would never hurt us intentionally.
Oh man, this sound is crazy.
always to a dangerous level. To make matters worse, after Pierce was born, he was moved from his room in the house to a place in the garage. That room stank. He was rarely left alone, and it was often dark. He was sent there for a variety of reasons. These ranged from major behavioral issues to the most minor issues, such as talking back, which was usually just trying to explain himself. Most of the time, it was these little issues. I sent my father into a rage, and my mother followed in his footsteps. If he said anything, it would be talking back, and if he said nothing, it would be rude because he wasn't answering his questions. Again, I ask, what is a kid supposed to do in that situation? It's not fair. I couldn't do anything about it, and I should not have been worried about doing anything. I should not have had to worry and continue to worry for my brothers in life. Nola have to be so angry about her parents. Ronan should not have to feel so guilty about the abuse inflicted on him. Pierce should not have to grow up without his siblings. My siblings and I should not have to see our last names in the news. We should not have to see our parents' mugshots. We deserve as regular of a life as we can get. I know I want that for them, at least. Thank you for taking the time to hear me. Fiona Ferriter.
Thank you. You have another statement, Ms. Coakley?
Yes, Your Honor. This one is from Noah Ferriter.
Oh, this is the younger one, younger sister.
All of the past almost 2 years have been a whole life-turning experience. It has had huge ups and downs. Some of the time I felt like I just wanted it all to be over with and all gone. I do not usually express my emotions, but when I do, it all comes out. Every time that has happened, it has had something to do with my parents. They can say all they want, that they love me and my siblings and care for us, but do they really? They say it, but they don't show it. If they really did, all of this would have been in the past, over, and they would do what's best for my siblings and my mental health, especially my brother Ronan. They have put him through so much, and I will never forgive them for treating him the way they did. After everything they did to him, all the abuse, neglect, they keep on saying it's all his fault. None of this has ever been at all his faults. Parents should be parents, which means parents should be loving and caring, and they were none of that. When I lived in that house, I used to think saying I love you was weird. We never said it to each other. My dad would always either be working or watching TV. We hardly had times where we would come out and hang with the family. I was also never allowed to hang out with my brother Ronan and my sister, and I never got the bond that sisters are supposed to have because our parents wouldn't let us be kids. When I was there in that house, I had to be perfect, no matter what. I had once been playing around with a friend in class, and the teacher had said something to my parents about it. Later, when I got home, I got yelled at and yelled at. There were no mistakes allowed. At first, I thought the way our household was run was normal. I had thought that my brother living separate from us was normal because they always said it was because of his actions. Now being older, Ronan did not do anything wrong. He was being a kid. He was not allowed to do anything, so he went back at them as a kid would usually do. If the parents say no, the kids want to do it more. Right before we moved to Florida is when I started realizing that the way that my mom and dad acting was not right. I had started to get afraid of him and would hide in my sister's room with her so I did not need to see him. I had always seen the way he treated Ronan. It was horrific. No child should be ever treated in such a way. I have seen my brother being held back by the back of his neck to walk to the bathroom, being screamed at the top of my dad's lungs. Ronan screams for my dad. I have heard the whip of the jump rope hit Ronan and the slaps of banging on the wall. Being in that house was scary. My brain has tried to let me forget a lot of what happened and has locked it away. They can say all they want that Ronan had put me in the hospital and been a danger to us, but all he was doing was playing around and being a kid, and I also played around with him too. The way Tim talks about my brother is crazy. Saying all of this is his fault is insane. How does a person not care at all about a child he himself raised from a baby? Nothing Tim did is justified. Tim and Tracy have put me and my siblings through so much bad mental health. At one point, I was scared to go out of my house because I thought my parents were stalking me. I saw them once after school while I was walking to get picked up.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object again on grounds, both as to Fiona and Nola's statements about actions from the parents towards them that are not related to the child RF. Additionally, if the court would look at Florida Statute 921.143, it looks like the victim impact statements are only for the victim, that's within law enforcement, correctional or correctional probation
Sorry, I was rattling something.
Statement. So I believe under that statute, the statements of Fiona and Nola should not be considered by the court.
Response?
They're next of kin. They're his sisters.
Objections overruled.
Uh-huh.
You may continue.
In the morning with my brother, and then I never wanted to see them again. They have kept me away from my younger brother. I have not seen him in over a year, and they will not let my speak. Oh wait, sorry. In the morning with, I was walking to get picked up, and I froze. I couldn't feel a thing, and my instinct was to walk away and not say anything. This is the first time that I have seen them since they got arrested. The first time they got arrested, I had seen them that day in the morning with my brother Pierce. After that, I never wanted to see them again. They have kept me away from my younger brother. I have not seen him in over a year, and they will not let me speak to him on the phone. All this has hurt me so bad when I feel like nothing can hurt anymore. Me, Fiona, and Ronan are all good kids and did not deserve any of this. Sincerely, Nola Ferriter.
Doesn't sound very good what the siblings say. Trust the children. That is so sad for them. That is my cat Paris chiming in. She's saying, show no mercy. No, she's really watching me because I have a piece of cheese. Not watching, well, she is watching and meowing. She better not run across this keyboard. I know. Those are compelling and heartbreaking impact statements.
And this has been made a part of the record.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, anything else as far as evidence? Okay, brief argument on the motion for downward departure, and then I'll switch over to full argument on the sentencing.
Understood, Your Honor. Can I offer one, I can call a witness for it unless the state would agree. Fact in rebuttal, I was not provided the victim impact statements in advance, and NF's victim impact statement implied that Tim and Tracy are not allowing her to see her younger brother. I don't know if the state would object to this, but during the course of the trial, it was actually attempted that they would see him, but since it was during the course of the trial, both the state and defense agreed that that would not happen. That wasn't Tim or Tracy at all. And so I do think that there are some things that are being misconstrued by the children, but that one particular fact that that child is being withheld from his siblings by these two people, I don't believe is true. So I don't know if the state would agree to that as to the trial.
And I think that's factually inaccurate.
Factually inaccurate, what was in the statement or what Ms. Murata is saying?
I remember Ms. Murata saying is how that went down. Ultimately, the state agreed, and they would not agree to do it and did not allow it. And they only offered it one day, which was the morning of jury selection. Ultimately, we agreed they could do it.
So we don't have a stipulation, so what is your request to the court then, Ms. Murata?
If I could briefly call Kathy, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name, Kathy, just to discuss this briefly. Yes, who is she has privately adopted that child at this point.
Okay, any objection?
It'll be very short.
I mean, she's not listed.
All right, I'm going to allow it. You can call her
Thank you.
as rebuttal to the victim impact statements.
So the youngest brother's been adopted by somebody else? Wow. This is messy.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It's going to be an informal
It'll be
testimony.
really short. She can stand right there if you'll allow it.
That's fine. You can stay at the podium, ma'am. Just pull the mic down so I make sure we pick your voice up.
I'm sorry, I know you was Grandma Kathy. What's your last name?
Nuremberg.
Norrenberg. Miss Norrenberg, are you Tracy's mom?
Yes.
And have you now privately adopted PF?
Yes.
Okay. Have there been efforts since your adoption of PF to do visitation with the siblings, NF, FF, and more limited with RF given the placement?
Many, on numerous occasions, we've tried to get the kids to, to talk, and we've even offered the girls to pay the flights to come to our home and they had bedrooms at our house. I mean, they wouldn't even respond.
Okay. It's my recollection that the foster placement, we cannot state their names, actually sent you a, well, I believe there was one time where a meeting was scheduled and they didn't show up. Is that correct? There was some sort of,
Yes.
whether that was them for forgetting, we don't know. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you also sent a text message by the foster father that was rude towards you, that was not meant for you?
He, mistakenly sent a text message to me that was meant for somebody else, but it was very, it was not very nice about me, and I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, if the girls wish to see their baby brother, is that something that you would facilitate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's their sisters and brother.
I don't have any additional questions for this witness.
Any inquiry, Ms. Coakley? All right.
So at the trial, you offered to allow the girls to see her on the, to see the peers on the very first day of jury selection, correct?
I don't know when it was. I wasn't here for jury selection.
Okay, you weren't here. Where were you going to see them? Where was the meet going to happen? You were in Florida, right?
No.
You were in Florida.
I was not in Florida for jury selection.
You were in Florida during the trial, correct?
I was, but not for jury
With peers, correct?
Yes, I was.
And whose house were you staying at?
At a friend's house.
What's the friend's name?
Jolene Zimmering.
Okay, and the defendants were staying with you at the friend's house, correct? That's where Tim and Tracy were staying, correct? Tim and Tracy were not staying with Colin and is it Jolene Zimmering during the course of the trial?
When I was there.
Okay, that's your testimony under oath. They weren't staying with you there?
No.
Okay, and the NOLA and the foster parents actually texted you and said, we would like to meet at a park with DCF supervising, correct?
That's after. I was here. I had somebody babysitting Pierce, and I was here. I don't need a facilitator for the girls to see my adopted son.
But that's what
Be there.
the girls would feel comfortable with, correct?
No, I never said that I would allow that at all. I think that I should be able to meet with my grandchildren without having to have a facilitator present.
Okay, so it's true that the girls,
Not within minutes.
You're not at liberty just to not follow the question and answer the question. So
this reeks.
please listen to the question and answer it.
so the girls wanted to meet with their brother in order to be comfortable. They wanted to meet at a park with a facilitator, and you said no, correct?
I said I couldn't because the state said that we couldn't.
And even after the state said we could do it at a park with a facilitator, you still said no, correct?
I went home after that.
You went home. What day and after the trial did you go home?
I don't even.
It was after the verdict. You were there for the entire time. And are you aware that the state said that they could meet at the park?
That wasn't something
Ma'am,
I could
just let me finish the question. That the foster parents offered to allow the children to meet at a park, and you said no, correct?
I said no.
And you were there on the trial.
I never answered that question.
Okay.
He sent me a message saying that the state said you can, and I didn't have the time. I was here. I did not have the time to go and meet with them, at a park, because I was in trial.
Okay, and so we were in trial for 2 weeks, correct?
Correct.
And one of those over a weekend, correct? 2 weekends, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to just say yes or no out loud.
Yes.
And also there was a Monday off because it was on President's Day, correct?
Correct.
So during all that time, you weren't able to because you were in trial, correct?
I wasn't here. I don't think I was here for the President's Day weekend.
Well, you told us you were here all the way till the end,
Well,
correct?
I was here, but not for President's Day.
And you said that Tim and Tracy weren't actually staying with you at Colin, Zimmerick, and Joanne or Jean? Which one is it? So I say it right. Jolie. They weren't staying with you at that house.
No. And you know what? I had an Airbnb. I'm all caught off guard here. We rented an Airbnb.
Okay, so you had an Airbnb, you weren't actually staying at that house. And no. So your test.
Sorry, Your Honor. I'm caught off guard here.
And was Pierce staying with you or was he staying with his parents?
No, Pierce was staying with me.
Okay, and are there times where you have allowed Pierce to be in the custody of his parents without you? No? Tracy Ferriter didn't have him in Arizona and trying to enroll him in daycare?
No.
That didn't happen?
No.
So there was never a time where Tracy, after you adopted your grandson, tried to enroll Pierce in Arizona
No.
in daycare.
No.
And that wouldn't make sense because you don't live in Arizona either, right?
No, I don't.
And when last week, Tracy was staying with you, correct?
I'm going to object to outside the scope at this point. I was asking very specifically, Nola Ferriter's victim witness statement, which I was not provided in advance, stated that Tim and Tracy are preventing the siblings from seeing their baby brother. The state has specifically requested in their sentencing memorandum no contact with all of the children. So I am simply calling the adoptive mother to say that Tim and Tracy are not trying to withhold this child from their siblings.
All right. The objection's overruled. Door's been opened. This witness was called as a rebuttal witness to the victim impact statement. So as long as the questions follow with respect to the scope of the impact statements, I'm going to allow it.
And so Pierce was with you and Tracy staying at your home in Illinois, is that correct? Last week.
Yes, he was.
And Tracy was staying there too, correct?
She was not.
She was not at your home?
No, she was not.
Okay, where was
Whoa.
she staying?
I don't know. Ask her.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, so there were multiple times last week that you were together with Pierce, Tracy, and yourself, correct? In Illinois? You weren't together?
No.
Are there times where Tracy was by herself then with Pierce?
No. I've been with Pierce. My husband's been with Pierce.
Okay.
His other grandmother's been with Pierce.
So it's your testimony under oath that in the last month or so, Pierce has not been alone with Tracy.
That's correct.
Okay. And if Tracy is able to put Pierce on the phone to talk to the defendant on jail calls, how would that occur?
Ask her.
Okay. Are there, so you wouldn't know how that occurred. Pierce is,
My objection to it being outside the scope, and just for the
Well,
background, there's no bar between PF talking. There is no contact order, so I'm not really sure.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection because now the questions are going to the credibility of the witness at this point, and that's permissible. So the objection's overruled.
I don't really like this witness.
so you're saying that Pierce is always with you or the other grandparents?
That's correct.
And there's never a time where he's alone with Tracy?
No.
And so Tracy wouldn't be able to put Pierce on the phone with the defendant, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it true that Tracy calls you on some occasions when she's not with you in Illinois, and you three-way in order to allow Tim to talk to Pierce, correct?
Okay, yes.
That happens almost every day,
Because I can hear those jail phone calls.
No, it happens several times a week, correct?
What is this all about?
Overruled. The attorney is the one who makes the objections. Just listen to the question.
This witness has consistently said, this is what they're saying, that she's with Pierce.
Approach, I don't want you educating the witness for the day, so.
Oh boy, this is getting slippery. The sisters probably don't want anything to do with their grandmother, Tracy's mom. And they don't feel comfortable. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. This is... I had no idea this was going to get all interesting, heated. The kids are always the ones who suffer the most. I'm just flabbergasted. Was it worth them to lose all the parents? I mean, it's not.
The objection's sustained.
I mean,
All right,
to lose the.
any follow-up redirect
Not from the
from the defense? Okay. All right, does that conclude the evidence in this case then? let me just state, I'd like to thank both sides in advance for the presentation of your respective positions. I understand that this is a difficult and challenging case for both sides, and certainly the facts are not easy for the court to address. Let me state up front that the court has reviewed everything. I've closely considered the testimony that was presented today and all of the evidentiary submissions that were provided to the court in advance to review in preparation for this hearing, and I've taken all of that into consideration as to what will ultimately be my ruling here. I will say up front that the court's job is not to please either side in terms of its ruling on sentencing, and I don't ever consider that. I always approach it from the standpoint of, based on the totality of circumstances in any given case, what is the appropriate sentence to mete out an appropriate justice in the case that I'm dealing with at that specific point in time. So I suspect that whatever I do today will probably make everyone unhappy, because it's going to be a decision that nobody gets what they want, and sometimes that's probably the best approach by the court. Let me talk a little bit about the facts that I am basing my decision on, and what I've observed during the course of this sentencing hearing, and in the context of the evidence that I'm privy to by virtue of having sat on the trial. I found that, at least based on the evidence, that the defendant clearly, and he was found by the jury to have been guilty of the 3 charges of which they rendered the verdict on. And so that puts me in a position of finding that the defendant engaged in conduct that the jury found to be criminal for an extended period, and that the conduct he engaged in was considered, it was calculating, it was methodical, and it was planned. I mean, you look at the construction of the room and what that took to put into place, and just the structure, not only of the building of the room itself, but of the method of discipline during the time that RF spent in the state of Florida. The one thing that, and the reason I mention that is because there were plenty of opportunities. This wasn't a 1-day deal or a 2-day deal. This was a situation that occurred over a 6-week period in the state of Florida. And so what that tells me is that there were plenty of opportunities that the defendant had to reflect on whether what he was doing was wrong. And over the 6-week period in the state of Florida, it appears that he never took the time to reflect, and he never concluded that what he was doing was wrong. And there is evidence to suggest that he did know what he was doing was wrong, because there was evidence that he instructed RF to dump the urine bucket in the bushes and not let the neighbors see him. There was evidence of Mrs. Ferriter removing the bucket from the room prior to law enforcement going into the room. So there was evidence that the court can at least look to that convinces me that the defendant knew what he was doing was wrong, and never reflected once to take a remedial or corrective course. And I think ultimately that's what influenced the jury's decision in this matter. So there were opportunities along the way for the defendant to do what I would call a sanity check on whether what he was doing was the correct approach, and maybe a need to reverse course. That never happened. I mention this because I spent a lot of, this isn't the first thought or consideration that I'm giving to this. I've spent a lot of time dealing with this case and trying to determine whether the defendant has any redeemable qualities that should influence the court's decision. And on this point, admitted, I cannot say that the defendant is devoid of any redeemable qualities. I've a lot of statements, I've reviewed photos, and it certainly appears that at times his family had very good times and experiences, and that at times he was attempting to be the basically textbook father. But that's what was on the surface. Because what's clear is that although things appeared to be very, very perfect on the surface, that what was going on below the surface was not so perfect, and that a very deep, dark family secret was being maintained in that household, and that is the defendant clearly was abusing his oldest son, which the jury has found that he did. And I will tell you that it's not lost on the court that the defendant was struggling himself as to how to deal with the discipline of the child. I don't think that the evidence that was submitted, it all reflected RF as a problem child to the extent that he was really beyond anything that normal kids do. And sitting up here on criminal court, I see it every day. And things like stealing candy, wrestling with your sister and injuring or something like that, those are not serious instances that would ever justify the level of discipline that was imposed here. And the other thing I would say is even, and let me just digress for a moment. I've looked at the redemptive qualities that the defendant has, and he doesn't have a prior history. He has no criminal background, and he has experienced the loss himself in terms of the utter collapse of his family and having all of his children taken away. But I also note that he stated that he was born and raised on Quantico, at Quantico Base. So I suspect that tells me, knowing that it's a Marine Corps base, that he probably grew up in a very disciplined environment. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie The Great Santini, but there was a movie where Marine, the Great Santini, he was a tough disciplinarian father as well. And if you ask Pat Conroy today, he probably would find a way to say he loves his father in some ways, but I'm sure at some point in time he hated his father. And the reason I point that out is, again, I'm looking for any redemptive aspect of the defendant's nature and character that would give me some ability to factor that in as a positive point in this case for sentencing. At the end of the day, the jury found the defendant guilty of the 3 charges that were in the verdict, and so I'm bound by that. So the first question that I will have to look at is whether there's a legal basis for a downward reduction. And before I get into that in more detail, I will say that whatever the sentence is that I impose in this matter, it will be for a defined period, and it will come to an end. And at some point, the defendant will have the opportunity to try to put his life back together. And I get it, that his life has been turned upside down, and from his vantage point, probably destroyed at this point. But the pain and the suffering that he's experiencing will end at some point, and he'll have an opportunity to move forward. The concern I have is that for the victim, the treatment to which he was subjected to by his father will be with him for a lifetime. And I know that, and I always listen to the victim's statements very carefully, and I know that he's professed that he loves his father, and he's asked for the court to take a specific route in terms of sentencing. But the bottom line is that he was subjected to an abuse that should never be experienced by any kid, from any parent. And I can't just look at the victim's wishes alone in determining what is an appropriate sentence, because no parent can ever be justified in doing what Mr. Ferriter did to his son, RF, in this particular instance. And I remain concerned that, as I've said, that most, if not all, of the problems were caused by the defendant himself and his discipline of the child. And the long-term harm and emotional impact that the victim probably doesn't even know he is going to suffer for the future as a result of the conduct he was exposed to. So, as you can tell, I've considered a lot of things. So this brings me to the ultimate question of what is an appropriate sentence for the defendant on the charges for which he has been found guilty. So let me address the matter of the defense motion for downward departure. All right, so as I've said, the first 2 points that were raised by the defendant for downward departure, I don't believe that they met their burden of establishing a sufficient factual basis based on competent, substantial evidence for the utilization of Section 921.00262F, which grants the court the ability to downward depart where the victim was an initiator, willing participant, aggressor, or provoker of the incident. I don't believe that under the circumstances of this case that there is any basis for the court to use this as a legal prong justifying a downward departure. And I think if there was, then it would potentially throw child abuse cases, flip them on their head in terms of what parents can do and ultimately what the court can do in terms of sentencing. Likewise, I don't find any merit in the ground that was asserted in 921.00262F dealing with the question of the need for restitution outweighing the need for a prison sentence. Under the circumstances involving RF in this instance, I don't believe restitution is a factor at all. It won't be a factor in my sentencing decision. So again, I don't think the defense has met its burden here. So that brings me to the last prong that I did give very serious consideration to and quite frankly troubles the court the most in terms of where my legal ruling comes out on this. And that is the portion of section 921.0026 that states that the court may consider the enumerated downward departure grounds, but I'm not limited to them. So that means that if there's competent substantial evidence of something else, that I can consider it. And as I understand the Montana's case, and I get that the Montana's case cited by the defense is not on all fours, a perfect match, but the court does make a statement there that does give this court some feeling that I could look to this particular section as a reason to downward depart if I wanted to. And that is, while no case has ever permitted a downward departure sentence based on that reason, and that was the reason they were talking about in Montana's, such a reason was not otherwise prohibited by law. So that brings me to the question that I ask, is the issue of, without in any way, shape, or form looking to the conduct of the victim as justification or excuse here, can I look to the mental status or situation that the defendant was experiencing and use that as a possible basis under the catch-all provision that would give me the ability to downward depart? And I'm not aware of any case that says I can't. And so, not being aware of any case that says I can't, I'm going to make a finding that under 921.0026, under the catch-all provision, that if I think the competent substantial evidence does support the argument that I can look to the conduct of the defendant and what he was experiencing and what he believed to be the case, and whether that belief was irrational or not influenced what turned out to be horrible decisions, can I consider that? Because I think that is analogous to what the court did do in the Montana's case. And so I'm going to find that under that section I can, and I do find there's been enough evidence for me to at least consider the catch-all provision. And let me talk about a few things that I recall hearing today and also that I recall hearing during the trial. There's no question that the defendant was acting aggressively and irrationally at times during the videos that we saw. And there is no question that there was a methodical, calculated effort to discipline his son in a way that I think he thought was appropriate and believed was appropriate. Although, again, that's weakened by the fact that he did try to conceal that conduct from the neighbors. And so that cuts against that conclusion somewhat. But I do think that the defendant probably came from a disciplined environment, having grown up in Quantico, and maybe that's all he knew. I don't know that that's the case or not, but having been a Marine, I know how Marines operate, and I know how disciplined the environment can be. And I will say that as horrible as the conduct was, the defendant's response in dealing with his son in terms of the room, if you look at the photos, there clearly were times that this family was a better functioning family. They had good times. It wasn't all horrible. It wasn't all the most deplorable of circumstances. And I get it now that the two daughters, they seem to be extremely harmed by this. But there were times when they appeared to be enjoying things, and I've seen those photos. So I don't cast the broad net of putting the defendant in the category of always having been a terrible father. There were times when he tried to do the right thing, and I think did do the right thing in terms of exposing his kids to things that were positive in their lives. But that's not the end of the story, because he obviously exposed them to things that were deplorable, criminal, and that no children, neither the victim nor their siblings, should have ever been exposed to. And any type of physical abuse where a child is being held by the throat by a parent is just not acceptable in any civilized society, and certainly putting a child in a locked room, restricting the access to any air conditioning is not appropriate, certainly not in Florida. So at the end of the day, I'm going to find a basis to downward depart under the catch-all. So the question then is whether I should exercise my discretion in doing it. Because I do find that this is a somewhat unique and complex situation because of the situation that maybe the victim has RAD. It's not totally clear that he does. It's not totally clear that what he has wasn't caused specifically by how he was treated by his parents. But I do recognize that there's enough that it creates an issue where this is not your normal situation of child abuse where their children are put in a cage or a box, and there's nothing that explains what was going on here. Ultimately, the state is requesting 15 years, and I think the defense is requesting 1 year based on the motion, followed by probation. And I do note that I can go all the way up to 40 years. So at the end of the day, as I said before, I am totally convinced that what I do will not please anyone here, but ultimately the buck stops for me, and the responsibility ends with me and falls on my shoulders to issue a sentence that I think is appropriate to the circumstances. I will say that it is not lost on the court that not only is the defendant here going to be the one to suffer the weight of the sentence that I impose, but the entire family has already suffered the trauma and the ramifications and consequences of the defendant's conduct. And on that issue, I do think that the defendant exercised and expressed his remorse at that. I just wish he'd have been a little more forceful in getting the point to me that he actually acknowledges that what he did was wrong, and I didn't get that. I still didn't get that, because I have some sneaking feeling that if all things being equal, the defendant might say that he would do the same thing over again because he thought it was the right thing to do out of love at the time he did it, and that creates problems for me. I hope that I'm wrong on that, but at least that doubt has been allowed to remain in my head. So, all right, so enough said on this. I am going to exercise my discretion to downward depart here. I'm going to, but I will tell you that the downward departure is not even remotely close to what the victim has requested, nor the defense counsel requested. And at the end of the day, the sentence that I'm going to impose is going to be longer than what the guidelines provide. I'm going to downward depart from 75 months to 60 months, and followed by 5 years of probation, 2 years of the first 2 years of probation of which will be in CC2. During the term of probation, the defendant is not to have any contact initiated with any of the 3 older children. Those children will be free once they reach age of majority to have contact with the defendant if they so choose. In any event, even if the children so choose to have contact with the defendant, they will not be able to do so until the defendant has first completed the following conditions of probation. I'm going to require that the defendant undergo a 40-hour anger management class, which can be taken while he is in custody, that he undergo a 40-hour parenting course, and that he also undergo a mental health evaluation. With respect to the youngest child, given the nature of the appointment or the adoption there, I'm going to require any contact or visitation be supervised, but ultimately subject to any restrictions that the dependency court imposes, because obviously the dependency court, if they're still involved, then maybe they're not involved anymore. They don't have any jurisdiction anymore. So I'm going to leave it that there be no contact unless it's supervised with respect to the younger child. And the reason the court is allowing that is the circumstances that presently exist. The youngest child has been adopted by the wife's mother, and it's just not realistic in the court's view that where the adoption was permitted of the wife's mother, that any rational people looking at this situation would conclude that the parents are not going to have any contact with that child, or they should not have allowed the adoption to be by the wife's mother to begin with. So.
I explained it to them because I was present. I don't believe that's true, but I think that if the court could say that whatever is in, I just don't know if the easiest.
Well, what does the why don't you approach on that one point, because I don't want to inadvertently disclose something that's privileged.
I'm speechless. I don't know. I just have to think. What do y'all think so far? Of course, I've been sitting here watching it straight and recording it since I got home from school, so I'm kind of weary, but it's so sad what the three oldest are and will continue to suffer. But that in itself could be punishment enough. But for him, for Mrs. Ferriter, I guess she had to.
All right, so with respect to contact with the minor, the youngest child, I'm going to allow supervised contact as permitted by the adoptive mother, but it must be supervised. So there shall be no unsupervised contact between the youngest child and the defendant where there isn't another adult present. And I'm also going to, it's just as a condition of that, require that the defendant not be in any way, shape, or form engaged in the discipline of the youngest child. That is something now that rests solely with the adoptive mother, and the defendant has no say in that. I want to make sure that that's clear. Let me comment just very briefly, and then I'll be concluding this hearing. Ultimately, when I started this process, I was looking at a sentence that was in excess of what I've ultimately rendered today. So the court was moved to some extent by the tremendous showing of support that the defendant had and the number of character references, who I'm sure all saw the side of the defendant that is the side that we've heard, the two sides of the same coin. But there was enough support for Mr. Ferriter to, at least for me to have some comfort in concluding that at his core, although he did a very, very, very bad thing here, was not an innately evil person.
And so that's why I've ultimately elected to have the sentence be what I've indicated. And as harsh as that may seem to some of the members of the family and friends of Mr. Ferriter, I will tell you, take some solace in that it's a lot less than what I originally started out when I looked at this for purposes of consideration of a sentence. The other thing I will tell you is, although in every case is unique and dependent on the facts and circumstances, it's not unusual for a victim to come into the court and express their love for a parent who's abused them or to ask for a lighter sentence. We see that all the time, and some would say that that is a reflection of a psychological harm or phenomenon of how abused kids react to things. But that doesn't mean I ignore it, and I certainly, it was too heavy a lift to go with what the victim was requesting here, because there has to be some punitive aspect that doesn't, from a societal standpoint, encourage parents to do what was done here and think that they're going to be dealt with lightly. I don't think that the court has dealt with Mr. Ferriter at all lightly. I think I've dealt with the court or dealt with Mr. Ferriter appropriately. And so I just want to be clear for those who think it's too much, it's less than what I started with, and for those that thinks it's not enough, that's why I wear the robe and I make the decision. So ultimately, that's my responsibility. So that's the court sentence in this matter. Madam Clerk, what is the court cost? If you need to clarify something, we can do that. Yeah, go ahead while she's looking up the court. To the downward departure?
Downward departure, to think that there's not competent substantial evidence of the basis for downward departure, and also that it's not a permissible under 92.126 to depart on the basis of the mental status of the defendant, or that the defendant held an irrational belief during the course of the act. And so based on that, we think that there is not a legal basis for the departure.
All right, fully expected. The court always knows when I'm getting into an area where you never know how an appellate court is going to react, so I fully expected the state to object to the downward departure. Anything else you need to state, Ms. Murad, for the record?
Not for the record. I do have a request that the court recommend that when Mr. Ferriter is eligible, that he be at Sissago Palm.
That's pretty standard. Just prepare the order that provides for that, and I certainly, usually the state doesn't take a position on that, right? All right, so the court will grant that.
Thank you. And then my other request is, we will be filing a motion for appellate bond. It'll be filed tomorrow. Could the court order that he remain in county custody until the hearing of that bond motion, which I'm hoping will be near Thanksgiving?
It's not going to be Thanksgiving because I need to hear that, and I won't be around next week. So I will order that the defendant remain in custody here in Palm Beach County and not be transported until after I hear the motion, and I'll set that as quickly as I can.
Are we able to set a date today, or is that?
No, I'm going to need to see the motion and see how much time is going to be involved with it.
Understood, Your Honor. Okay. I'll prepare an order to the effect of both.
All right, Madam Clerk, court calls, please. All right, so you tell me, Ms. Murad, reduced to a judgment, or do you want to have a payment plan, or what?
Can we do 10 years?
That'll be fine. A condition of probation. 10 years is a condition of probation. All right. All right.
Is the probation as to count one only?
No.
And then counts 2 and 3 are.
Ms. Coakley, does it make a difference to the state in terms of the probation being as to count 1 only?
It doesn't, Your Honor.
All right. Yeah. All right, so the DOC sentence will be as to applicable to all 3 counts.
And it's to run concurrent on all.
Run concurrent. That's another thing I note. I could have had it run consecutive. That 5 years would have been 15, but I'm, again, exercising my judgment to make them run concurrent, so it's 5 years. But that'll be the DOC portion of the sentence with respect to each of the charges, and the probationary aspect of my sentence will be applicable to count 1 alone. All right, anything else that I need to address?
Just the credit.
Yeah, let's talk about credit.
I need to check the honor. I believe he did spend one day and then I think that
All right, so before we recess, give me the credit so that's the last thing I need to address this afternoon.
Wow. I was not expecting that. I would have thought, I was thinking at least 10 years. But 5, and what was it, 5 years probation? I hope he understands that he got off really, really easy. I know I'm not him, and I'm not there in jail where people are beating me up and insulting me and all that kind of stuff, but a box for a box, I guess. But yeah, I'm surprised. But then now that I've had a chance to absorb it a little and try, as I say, to remove my emotion, which is very hard. Because again, the way the victim spoke, and let's not forget the sisters, the older one and the one that's younger than him. Wow, they had a lot to say about Tim and Tracy, which leads us to Tracy. What is her trial going to look like? I mean, I think when they offered him that plea deal, Timothy Ferriter, back in September, it was something like 2 years prison, 5 years probation. He should have snatched it up. But if I'm not mistaken, he would have had to have thrown Tracy under the bus. I wonder if that's going to be how it will be for her. And if she throws him under the bus, since he's already been sentenced, if it won't make any difference. But I'm thinking, I don't know, will the jury be a little bit harder on Tracy? Because it's a mom's nature. What's the saying, you don't mess with mama bear's cubs. And I know that if the father of my children, number one, I would have never, ever, ever let him build a box in the garage and just discard him like trash, or a rabid dog or something like that. That's just, to me, that's, as the victim himself said, inhumane. I mean, having to be there and go in a bucket. Now he could have constructed a better room. I mean, similar to the one in Arizona. I mean, before he got kicked out when the baby came, that had to hit him in the gut and the heart. Have some sort of restriction or something where, I don't know. The thing is, they had the means. And from what I could see looking at the trial, but I'll be going back through it, I don't think they searched a lot. I don't think they sought out a lot of help. They did have a lady on the stand here whose son allegedly has the same thing that their child has. But we don't know. I didn't play it because it was just long and it was hard to hear her, but I think she said she went to 180 different places. And she did describe how difficult it was. But as we all heard when the judge was prior to giving the sentence, he said yes, but I don't think the Ferriters went out and searched through that many people. It's almost like they just kind of gave up and said, okay, we're just going to put you in this box and we're going to give you food and control the AC. You know, that's the other thing. Not letting him use the AC and him getting admonished for using the air conditioner in Florida. I'm here in Florida, people, and I'm here to tell you right now as we speak, well, today might be a little bit better, but we've still been having very hot, humid days. And I'm thinking, what? I mean, I know it's Florida, but we've got to have some cooler weather sometime. But to do that and have the light from the other room, and not that I can diagnose, but he probably did have some ADHD. You don't shut up somebody. You know, it reminds me of like when you see like the lions or the tigers at the zoo and they're pacing. Breaks my heart. But to lock him away from people like he's a criminal and to not allow him interaction with his siblings. But it sounds like based on the sisters' impact statements, they weren't allowed to be together much. And boy, how about the sisters' statements? They didn't give, especially the younger one, she really put Tracy there equal to Tim, because she kept saying they, and the older daughter, the eldest of the family, didn't seem like she was very happy with the mother either. That's just heartbreaking. And so now Tracy's mom has adopted the youngest. And I wonder if the others will have a change of heart and want to see their parents. I don't know. I don't know. The other thing the judge pointed out about the witness who had seen so many people is that, and it's a great point, she didn't end up putting him in a 8x8 box. That's a big difference. Huge difference. And I was just thinking, as I said it, I didn't quote the victim correctly, even though it's the same thing I said. It was inhumane, but if I'm going to correct him, I need to correct him correctly. I think he said it was dehumanizing. Same difference, but I like to be correct with my quotes. But man, I think what maybe changed the judge's heart a little was the Marine thing, having been, I guess, in a similar situation as Timothy, and that Marines have a very strict, they're probably, they're very strict. He probably had a strict upbringing, and so he probably thought what he was doing was right. And so I think he kind of understood that, but the other side to that was, he said he wished, although he said he believes that I think the judge said this, and I think he loves his kids, but I don't know if he knows how to love them. And that's huge. And maybe he'll have a come to Jesus moment, and we'll be able to repair this damage. It's I don't know. It's a mess. It's a mess, a hot mess. But to get back to what the judge was saying, he said he heard him say he was sorry, and I heard him say something to the effect also, like when he was speaking to the victim, his son, I'm sorry what you've been through and what you continue to go through. I did everything for love. But he didn't say that he was completely wrong to have put him in that enclosure in the first place. Clearly, he did it in Arizona. Then he came and did it in Florida. And then the hiding and the sneaking around and all that. So in his mind, Timothy and Tracy knew it was wrong, but they still felt like they were right somehow. I don't know how. it would have broken my heart, no matter how mad my kids made me, to section them off like that, isolate them from people. That's only, as everybody says, going to make his situation worse. I'd be screaming too. I'd be breaking things. I'd be stealing food. The punishment did not fit the crime, what they did. That's one thing I just, It's just, I don't know. This is a hard one. But I will go back and play some of the court stuff. I mean, because there's some interesting things, and I don't think I shared the oldest sister's testimony, but their letters really covered a lot of what was on their mind. And I just wonder, I hope that at least the three of them will be able to be together and be able to see their little brother. I don't know, this is going to be a mess. This is a mess, and it will be a mess. And the parents made a big mess. But, what was it the judge called it? A family tragedy is what he called it. And that is an understatement. But we will have to stay tuned to see when Tracy's trial date is set and how that all goes. So, I think that is enough for now. I hope you all enjoyed this, although this isn't really an enjoyable piece, but perhaps some justice was served, and hopefully this family, especially the children, will be able to heal and go on and live productive lives. They all seem extremely bright, so I really hope. And I hope that Timothy sees what he did was so wrong, and Tracy too. But, one last thing, I'm kind of like off, but I guess the other thing that kind of swayed the judge is that the fact that Timothy did have so many supporters there. So I guess that spoke that he wasn't totally a lost case. I mean, no one's a lost case, but I think they have to admit what they did was wrong, and then ask for forgiveness for that. But that's not me. I'm not anyone's judge. Those are just my thoughts. So I will see you all soon. Remember, be kind to one another. Be kind to you. I love you. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up here now. I just had a tickle in my throat. I thank you all so much, as always, for your support, for subscribing, commenting, liking. I really appreciate it. I love you, and I will see you the next time.